Hello, and welcome back to another Pen Talk. Thank you very much for tuning in, spinning that dial on my direction, and joining me as I explore the amazing wide world of pens. And yes, we have another one added to my collection of thousands. And this is a pen that I have to be very honest, I bought because of you, my viewers. I thought a pen that you would want to see up close, hear my opinions on it. Yes, it's that big metal pen. It's in a lot of the online selling sites, eBay, AliExpress, etc., Etsy, and it's a heavy pen. That's why I needed this very strong brass rattlesnake to hold it up. It's a very simple design. It's all metal, enamel, I'm assuming over brass. The magnet doesn't stick to anything. We have a nondescript band there on the cap, which is 3 stars, which may symbolize a particular pen maker, not known to me. You know, like I say, it's a classic design. Flat tops and the finials. The cap comes off in about 1 3/4 turns, which is okay, and we'll see the first disappointment in my mind of this pen. It has a small number 6 nib, which we used to say number 6 was okay and better than number 5, but a pen of this size deserves a big nib. You can see how the section narrows down. You know, it's about half the diameter of that cap. There's no need for that. And you know, that's my opinion. The section unscrews, a lot of threads, nice O-ring there, which is good. But again, you can see another example of where they machined down everything to fit a standard converter. Would have been nice to put the big Jinhao converter in here, or their version of the big Jinhao converter, but they didn't do that. Another fall through. So I think that this is what I would call old school Chinese design. I'll bring in another couple of the older pens that I've had that are similar shaped, just big. How functional? Well, it's okay in the hand. It feels okay. And even though that section looks small, it's pretty beefy and big. And the weight of that barrel is fine. Now, I don't know who would want to put a heavy cap like this on the end of the pen, but it does post fairly deeply, but it does change the balance quite a bit. It's certainly back-weighted, takes away off the nib, which to me detracts from writing, because now you have to focus more on keeping that nib on paper to compensate for that cap. So let's take a look at some alternatives. We'll take this pen apart. Stay tuned. So I mentioned this is old school design, so here are 2 other pens, probably from the 90s or about there, from China. Very, very similar shape, flat ends, big pens, but certainly not as big as the metal one. And these are lighter. There's more plastic. In fact, the barrel and caps are plastic. That jewel in the clip is certainly not an aesthetic that I like. And they have different designs, and that actually has the Wing Sung emblem on it. Interesting rings there at the top. This is a 590. I don't know whether I did a review. I'll check and put a link in the description if I did. And this also has a similar nib there. Number 6. Different type of feet on the back. You can see from the section it's a much smaller pen, and those threads are kind of wonky with the cap. This one's a little bit smoother, but again we see another kind of plain number 6 nib. Again, these 2 pens never excited me. I tested them and then flushed them and put them in my drawer, not knowing that eventually they'd come out to do this comparison. So some people ask, what metal is the pen made out of? And the vast majority of pens are made out of brass. We'll bring in the trusty LED and you'll see a lot of yellow brass there. Machined. The threads are of plastic. My guess is this plastic end of the cap is glued in, and that band is part of that change between enameled brass here and plastic threads. And we can always look inside the barrel to further confirm what we saw in the cap. Yes, a lot of yellow brass in there. And obviously the magnet didn't stick, so we know it's not a ferrous metal. So I've done a partial disassembly of the pen, primarily because I wanted to remove the spring in the converter, and this metal collar just pulls off relatively easily. I like the converter have the metal ring at the end here to give it some stability when it is used in the pen. The nib assembly unscrews as expected, but these threads don't match up to any other nib assembly that I have, and we'll look at that in a little bit more detail later on. I do like the engraving on the nib, nice feather. This section is beefy. There is an O-ring there at the bottom, which is nice, but notice how they've reduced the size of the section to accommodate the converter. Been nice if they would have tried to use the Jinhao large converter, because it certainly would have fitted into this pen along with a number 8 nib. So you may say that this kind of has a funny look to it. Is it steel or is it brass? Well, here are the strongest magnets I have, and they don't really do anything. So I'm saying it's brass. The metal used in the pen is brass. Nothing attaches. And you may say, well, how do you know the magnets are working? Well, here's a Jinhao 992, a low-end pen, and yes, the clip is made out of formed steel, not brass. Brass is more expensive than steel, so that explains one thing. But brass is easier to electroplate, at least in my experience. So that's the pen. Let's take a look at that nib assembly and some other variations on the nib assembly on a number 6 nib. So here we have a number of number 6 nib assemblies for your educational purposes. Here's the nib assembly that I just pulled out of that big metal pen. And these threads are unique. Here's a Jinhao number 6, Moonman number 6. Here's a Bach. Here's a Yobo. And here's a Pen BBS. And as you can see, this one has already started to crack. And here's a new one with no cracking. So they all have their different approaches to how a nib collar should be. There's no standard threading. There's no standard sizing. There's no standard design. The length, everything is slightly different. Could you screw one in? Yeah, you might force it in. Threads don't have to match up exactly, but certainly not something I would do. To flip them over just to show you the various feeds that are used. And these all have that number in, indicating the mold that they were out of. And there's a lot of similarity here with these 3 Chinese feeds. As you can see, the Bach feed and the Yovo feed are much different in their design, and I think they're made with different plastic resins, and Pen BBS is here. One of the things that I noticed that was quite interesting is we've talked about the number that's in the feed, but they also have a number now at the back of the feed, so you can tell what mold the nib collar came out of, in addition to the mold that the feed came out of. That's something I haven't seen before. So I decided that black pen needed a black ink, and I haven't put this in a pen yet. Chinese ink in a Chinese pen, and it's black. Yeah, a little bit of gray there, but we'll see how it works in the pen. So much to my amazement, this nib is great. It feels good on the paper. From the moment I inked it up and first touched nib to paper, it laid down a nice, consistent line. It feels good on the paper, like I said. And as long as you don't put the cap on or try to post it, it's a nice, beefy, heavy metal pen, but it works well in the hand. So unlike some of those earlier models, which I didn't care for, this one's not bad. Yes, and the Hongdian ink works well in this pen. Good combo. So now we've come to the end of the video review. Let's take a look at some dimensions. So this pen is available in a few different colors. It seems to be selling out, so there may not be that much inventory for this pen, but if you're into the heaviest pen for the least amount of money, this pen is certainly in the running. So one of the positive things, and I try to always be positive about a pen because who knows which pen someone's going to fall in love with, and I'm not a fan of raining on people's parade. So one of the advantages of this design, even though it is that number 6 nib and it just doesn't have that same heftiness, but it's still a usable big heavy pen, and somebody may love that. And the section's a little bit smaller than the 9019 or 90 whatever, that other Jinhao pen that I compare this to occasionally. But this is a completely different pen for a completely different audience, at least from my view goes. So let's just put down some more ink and close off this video. So one thing I did mention, this is a medium nib. It was advertised as medium in the listing, but it's certainly fine to almost extra fine. So that's kind of misleading, but a lot of people like this size nib, and it certainly does write well. I've used it for a week now, and every time I pick it up and write with it, I just like it. It feels good. And to me, that's a really good testament to a pen. You can hear how very smooth that nib is, and for a fine nib, that's excellent. So I hope this video finds everyone safe, healthy, and happy, enjoying your pens, exploring this amazing world of pens that we have the honor to participate in. So with that, I want to thank everyone for watching. And we've reached the end of this video. And we will say bye. I don't really have any pens in the pipeline, but I have some other interesting things to do.